like I had a pretty close friend of mine, and I was like finally to the point when we were selling the company, it was like kind of under wraps, and I was finally to the point where I could like tell people, and I was like, hey, guess what? I'm selling the company, and I was like, guess how much it's for? And I was like hoping she's gonna guess like a low number. It's like, no, $5 million, and she's like, 500 million. I'm like, God, no, Jesus Christ. I'm like, only 5 million. Fuck, now I feel bad.
Why don't people shoot low? Welcome to Find Your Freedom, the best entrepreneurship podcast. Real quick, 3 things. Are you an aspiring entrepreneur that wants to find your own freedom? Or are you just unfulfilled or unhappy in your current job and you crave more? Our goal at FYF is to build a community uniting successful entrepreneurs with aspiring entrepreneurs and provide the best resources possible to support you on your entrepreneurial journey. Number 2, check out our free entrepreneurship ebook and all the resources you need to find your own freedom at findyourfreedompod.com. Number 3, one of the best ways for podcasts to grow is to share episodes with your friends and family. It would mean the world to us if you would follow us on your favorite audio platform, watch us on YouTube, and share your favorite episodes with friends and family. All right, we just finished recording with Jeremy Schneider, and his story is crazy. From selling a company that he started in college to retiring at the age of 36. Jeremy now spreads the gospel of financial literacy through Personal Finance Club with over 500,000 followers. This is one of my favorite episodes so far. Enjoy. Yo. Welcome, Jeremy. Super excited to have you on with us today.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
What's up, Jeremy? Welcome to the FYF podcast. And we'd like to get started here with asking you, what milestone or achievement are you most proud of in your career so far up to this point, and why?
Oh, it's hard to not answer when I sold my first company for $5 million. I mean, I guess I could make up other things I'm proud of, but that definitely like stands out in my career. And I've done other nice things too. But yeah, I started an internet company in college, bootstrapped, never took any venture capital or loans or anything, just spent less than we made, grew it for 11 or 12 years and then sold it. And there's one day I literally have a video of me videoing my computer screen when I clicked refresh on my bank account, and it went from like 100,000, which was like a lifetime of saving and investing up until that point, to like over 2 million, with the click of refresh, which was fun.
That's such a cool thing. I love that.
That's so dope. That's cool that you like captured that exact moment.
And it's a cool club to be in too. Not very many people have sold companies for millions, so I love that.
Yeah, it was a fun day, and I was lucky enough to previously when I sold the company, it was like a no cash, no debt deal, and so they had us like basically drain the bank account, so they're not like buying cash. And
right.
So like a few days earlier, I had done a wire transfer to drain like the $100,000 or so that was in the business bank account into my personal bank account, more or less, and that's why I had $100,000 in my personal bank account. And and also I learned that like Fidelity sends you an email like the moment you receive a wire. And so, cause like when I was moving $100,000, I was also like very excited about that, or very like, nervous about it. And so then I was like, ooh, maybe I could like catch, and actually I never, I did it like on a fluke. I wasn't like any sort of influence or anything back then. I was like, maybe this is gonna be interesting one day. Now I've actually posted that video publicly. I do obscure account numbers and things like that. But yeah, actually it's a pretty fun video to have now.
Yeah, right on. And I love hearing too that the overnight success that probably a lot of people think you've had actually took over 10 years. So that's good for people to realize like these things don't happen overnight.
Yeah, that's what they say. Overnight success takes about a decade.
Exactly.
It's when you see it happen to someone else, you're like, oh, must be nice. But then you're like, no.
Look what he just stumbled into. Yeah.
Right. They missed like the years where I was living on credit cards and grinding and like cold calling and, begging for sales and living on nothing. And, not that like I'm some sort of like rags to riches story necessarily, but like it definitely, it took 10 or 11 years to get there.
Yeah. And I saw a couple of clips that said you were like the lowest paid in your company through that period. Like you had really kind of put the company first the whole way through. And then you got that, that millions check at the end as the payoff, which I think is a really awesome way of bringing it full circle for you.
Yeah. My max take home salary at that company was $36,000 a year, which was, everyone made more than that. I just thought I could live on $3,000 a month. And so that's where I set my pay. And that was really it. Like, I feel like some people hearing this would be like, oh yeah, except for his trust fund. I was like, nope, that was literally it. I was living with roommates. I drove a 99 Ford Explorer. I like going out to eat meant like Chipotle or something, which was like a special occasion. It wasn't like,
Right.
I just wasn't spending much money.
And this is well turning down job offers to Google and Microsoft, I think were two of the ones I think I'd seen. You had like other opportunities. It's not like this is like your one thing. Like you graduated in Michigan, you had a lot of opportunities, and you're like, I'm running my own company.
Yeah, I interned for Microsoft for 2 summers as a software engineer, and then they offered me a lucrative full-time job, and I turned it down. And they actually, like, higher ups, like, they actually put up. I don't think they got turned down very often. So like they had higher ups, like up the Bill Gates didn't call me, but someone maybe a couple rungs below him with like a VP in their title or something.
Called you up. Why didn't you take the offer? What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what company Microsoft is? I was like, yes, I've heard you guys.
So we found you through your Instagram account, Jeremy, and you describe yourself as a transparent millionaire, which so cool. We love seeing the transparency. Can you tell us in your own words what Personal Finance Club does and how you made a name for yourself in this crowded space of online financial educators?
Yeah, I think a lot of my success in business has thanks to just my naivety. Like you said it was crowded. I didn't know it was crowded. I thought, when I started my first company, I had no idea how hard it was, and just through dumb ignorance, I was able to be persistent enough to make it work. And then when I started this, I thought there was like Dave Ramsey, who was big, and I thought there was Susie Orman, and they're both great, and I both think they maybe have failings. And I was like, oh, maybe there's like space for a third voice in this, and then I started. I was like, oh, there's thousands of people who are like doing this, and just like those guys are massive, and not like there's just not that many household names, but there's lots of people. So Personal Finance Club is basically a champion of the individual investor. We teach personal finance and investing, just the stuff that we should have learned in school. No get rich quick, no skeezy stuff. We don't, as a matter of principle, we never have taken any sort of paid ads. We don't do affiliate deals. We don't do sponsorships. We just give the advice that, should be being put out there without all the misaligned incentives that can exist in the financial industry. And I started on Instagram back in 2019, which it used to be that when I told the story, it was like just 6 months ago. And now it's like starting to sound like ancient history. But I had 0 Instagram followers, and I made a goal of posting to Instagram every single day for a year and trying to get 50,000 followers. And I think it was January of 2020 that I hit 50,000. So I think it took like 54 weeks or something. So I just missed that goal, but whatever, close enough. And now now I have 2 full-time employees, and we, produce content to basically help people learn about finance.
So the business is mostly posts on Instagram, and are you on other platforms as well?
Instagram's our biggest. We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. We have a website with lots of articles. And our business model is, we basically 99% of the money we've made is from selling one course. Essentially, now we have 2 courses. The second one's very new and hasn't sold much compared to the first one. We sell a course. Our average sale is $60, and so we sell like a $60 course that includes unlimited lifetime access. And that's our business for now.
Beautiful. Now, Jeremy, where did you acquire the foundation of your financial knowledge? Because obviously you can't start up this business and start teaching others how to manage their personal finances without first having that knowledge yourself. So where did you come into that knowledge?
It was a spectrum. I think that I had a relatively early introduction to finance, but I didn't know that until later in my life. But when I was 17, I got my first paid W-2, government is aware of it type job, working at a summer camp, and I made $1,200 for the whole summer. And then my dad very cleverly knew the rules of the Roth IRA were that you can't contribute this year more than $6,500 a year, but you can never contribute more than your earned income. And so the Roth IRA is meant for working people to save some of their income. And so when I had earned income for the first time, my dad basically gifted me. He matched me 100%, gifted me $1,200. I actually have the letter he wrote me. This is from 1998, also on my Instagram. I'm actually a little proud of my record keeping on that one. But he gifted me $1,200 that I made and said, this is going into your Roth IRA. You can keep the 1,200, little 17-year-old Jeremy can keep his $1,200 to like spend on whatever he wants, but we're going to match that. So letter of the law, we're following the rules of the Roth IRA. And then we opened up a Fidelity account. We chose some mutual funds. He walked me through it. And I just thought that was like normal 17-year-old stuff. And so that was like part of my fabric of my like late childhood into early adulthood. Then in my 30s, I would be talking to people and, my friends, I'd be like, hey, like, how's your Roth IRA doing? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, where do you keep your mutual funds? They're like, what are you talking about? And so we would like meet just for like, I was like, you got to get this going. Come on. And so like, we'd sit down and we'd like open up, we'd like have beers. And then one of my friends just was jokingly referring to it as Personal Finance Club. She's like, come over, let's have another meeting for Personal Finance Club. And that's literally where the name came from for what we're doing now.
Oh, beautiful story.
Best organic name landing. I love that. So how much a commission does your dad get for PFC now?
None. Yeah, I know.
You gotta give dad a steak.
No. I try to buy him gifts, but he tells me he doesn't want Christmas gifts. So
that is such a cool story. I love that. I love that start. So can you rewind a little bit? So I think a lot of people really find your story interesting because of the fact you started your first company in college. Can you kind of briefly talk us through like what was the catalyst for how it started, and then how you were able to kind of grow it well in college and scale a little bit?
Yeah, I love talking about those early days, because I think that people who haven't started a company before see this. They see Elon Musk, who is like putting ships into space, and they're like, there's a gap there, and the reality is like, the first step is just a step. It's like one foot in front of the other, and it's not putting ships in space just yet. And I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I didn't see myself as a founder, like, as a child or as a college kid even. In fact, I was like looking, I worked for Microsoft, and then as I was graduating, a girl I was dating had another year of school left. And so I didn't want to leave my college town. And I was looking for small companies. I was like, I don't really like working for big companies. I'll work for a small company. I was a smart guy. I was an engineer. I was like, maybe I could just be like a third or fourth or fifth employee that's like takes like a big role in the technology, but I obviously don't have what it takes to like be the visionary founder guy. But then I couldn't find that job, and I didn't want to leave the town. And I maybe if I wasn't dating someone, I might have just gone and worked for Greenpeace or something like that. But I decided, it's like, well, I guess I'll start my own company because I can't find one. And I literally was like Googling like how to start company. Like, do I just say it out loud? I was like Michael Scott in The Office. I was like, I declare I'm starting a company.
That's how I started my first company
really?
too. Exactly.
I mean,
what do I do first?
Exactly. And so yeah, it was my last year of college, and I figured out you had to fill out a form with the state. So I did. And then I figured out that the hard part of starting a company is like getting people to give you money. And so I started working on that. And I was like, I really had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to like sell websites to people, just anything to limp along until I.
So you were kind of like workshopping what the actual concept of the business was. Like, you hadn't landed hard on like, oh, this is like $1 million idea. I'm running with this thing.
No, I literally don't even tell people this because it's so embarrassing. And maybe I need to like lean into things that are embarrassing, but like,
yeah, let's get vulnerable.
The initial name of my company was Hercules Solutions. And I was like when I fill out that paperwork in college, it was called.
Let me go to GoDaddy real quick and grab that URL.
Oh no, it's taken, or at least it was actually. I don't even know it's there anymore. But yeah, I registered to HerculesSolutions.com, and I had no idea, but my thought was, I was like, okay, I know how to write computer software. I'm like a 22-year-old idiot who took 3 years of computer programming classes, so therefore I probably have some marketable skills. So I will just make a website that says custom computer software, and it was like such a bad idea because like nobody's looking for that. People want products like off the shelf that solve their problem. They're not, some people maybe think they should be hiring programmers, but even if they were, like, it was not the right marketing, it wasn't the right message. And so I put up some Google ads. I was like my
wow, you were going full force on this thing.
Yeah, contacts, whatever I could do. I was like literally, and that's how the company evolved to become RentLinks, which is what the company that I sold was, where I literally emailed my former landlord and was like, before I emailed him, I built an entire website for my former landlord who had this like really awful website where you couldn't like search the properties or anything. And I made them over the course of 3 days, like only like the Herculean effort of a 22-year-old who's needs food, like needs money for food. I like built a website from scratch over the course of 3 days where you could like see all the photos and search and filter by bedrooms and details of every property and all that stuff. And then I emailed it to my former landlord under the name Hercules Solutions to try to sell them a website. And he did not respond. And I was like, man, I was so shy, and I'm still so shy. And still to this day, I don't like talking on the phone. Just it's like a weird, like, introvert thing of mine or whatever. But
Wow.
I got to call this guy on the phone and get a no. Just 3 days, I wasn't getting paid anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But I was like, I at least got to like make sure his eyes saw this. And so I called him up and I was like, hey, my name is Jeremy. I'm a former tenant of yours. I made you a new website and I emailed it to you. Did you get it? And he said no. And I was like, oh, do you mind if I email it to you again so you can see it? And he's like, sure. And so I sent him that email. And then this website was literally hosted on a desktop computer sitting in my living room. And so I could see like how many incoming connections there were to it, which of course was zero because no one knew about it. And then I hung up and I was like sitting there watching the little analytics, how many, and then it was like zero. And then went to one for like 2 minutes or not even like 30 seconds or something. Then went back to zero. And then it was like quiet again. And I was like, well, I tried. He saw it. And then the phone rang and he's like, yeah, I'll take it. And I was like, what?
Yes.
Then he said, how much does it cost? And I was like, oh,
you had no price? You had no price ready to go?
I didn't think the sales cycle was going to go so fast. And so I literally made up a price on the moment, which I think was $3,000 plus $300 a month, which I don't know what on earth inspired me to charge that much per month. Although I think it was like a different time. Like now it's the age of like, WYSIWYG website builders that cost $9.99 or whatever. By the time you're like selling web developer services, which was like more expensive. And so he said, oh, the monthly fee is fine, but could you do 2,000 up front instead of 3,000? And this was this money.
How long did you pause? How long did you pause?
I know. I was like, let me check with my boss. Oh yeah, that'll work. And so
talk to the manager.
Right. That was how it started. It was literally, I had no idea what I was doing. I just was random. And that was the story that worked. There was probably 10 other things that didn't work around that time too, but just you don't tell those stories. It's survivorship bias.
Yeah, I think that might be the coolest startup story that we've had so far because of your obvious transparency around everything in your life, which you already share through your Instagram account and everything. But I think it really goes back to it really resonates with me because that's really how I was. I was like, I'm gonna start a hotel management company, but I'm 25 years old, and like these old, traditionally old people who own hotels aren't going to trust me with managing their property. So I'm just going to keep grinding until it happens, and then like kind of pivot a little bit, try and like figure something else out, get some consulting gigs, and it's just like I think that is what the traditional American entrepreneurial story is, and it's not told very often. So I super appreciate you sharing that with us. Now, talking to that 20-something kid, what are like the top 2 or 3 things that you wish someone would have told Jeremy back then? Like, hey, do these obvious things that will make your life way easier.
Oh man, there's so many. I don't know, like very like logistically track your books right away. And so I think that a lot of new entrepreneurs don't do the 2 or 3 or 4 necessary financial steps to keep their finances very clean. Like you should have a separate bank account for your business. You should have accounting software, probably QuickBooks if you're small, that tracks every single dollar in and dollar out. I think a lot of people like blend personal and business money, or just have a spreadsheet, or aren't tracking their expenses, and it hurts you a few ways. One, you don't really have a good finger on the pulse of your business if you're not really familiar with your numbers. You could be paying more taxes if you're not accurately counting all of your expenses against your income. Tax time is going to be stressful. And, when I do my taxes for my business, it's generally very easy, where I just now I use QuickBooks Online, and I just give my accountant online access, and then he understands, there's very little else that is required of me since I'm keeping up with the books.
Do you do your own bookkeeping, Jeremy?
Yeah.
No bookkeeper.
Pretty clean.
Yeah. I have 2 employees. I could ask one of them to do it, but just like so little work right now. At RentLinks, I had one of my employees doing it, but we do have like a tax advisor CPA, but he doesn't actually do the books. He just looks at them for at tax time.
Right. What's funny about that advice is it sounds really basic and simple, but for someone who went through the pain of trying to figure out the tax stuff at the end of the year, coming down to the deadline and like looking back through everything, like I can vouch, like really it is way cleaner if you have it pretty organized throughout the year. Even just a simple Excel spreadsheet as you're getting expenses can help it. But I totally agree with you. Go the full way and get a different bank account and different credit card and things like that, because it makes it so much easier, and use a good accounting software that can do it automatically.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. Did you have one more nugget that you thought, man, like this cost me so many extra man hours, or this cost me so much extra hours of my day?
I think a big one for me was, and this might be a huge thing that so many entrepreneurs are blind to, is that you really should be, and it sounds so cliche when it's going to come out of my mouth, but I'll explain, but you really should be listening to your customers. I think that so many entrepreneurs have this vision and they think they know what people want. And they're like, and I did that for years. After I sold that first website, I was like, I know what people want. They want landlord websites. And so I was trying to like slam landlord websites down property managers' throats for like 4 years or something. And with like very little, we were limping along, just barely selling enough to like, pay me enough to like go to the grocery store or whatever.
To get to your 3K a month.
Right, exactly. Not even, I was making less than that for a while. And they would basically all say to me, they'd be like, have a laundry list of reasons why they don't want to deal with their website. They're like, oh, my cousin's uncle's brother does it. I don't know what the password is. The website's fine. We don't care about the website. But they all would then say, what we want is leads. We want more renters calling us and emailing us about our available properties. And I would just ignore that for years. And finally, I think it was years into it. I was like, what I should do? Just sell them what they're asking for. And so we pivoted and we changed the business model where instead of just selling websites, we would send their listings, which we have now from many of our customers from their website, but we would send those listings out to all the other apartment search websites on the internet. So we send them like Zillow and Craigslist and apartments.com and rentals.com and apartment guide. And there's like 50 of these websites out there. And we made this new product where it's like, hey, we don't care about your website anymore. Just come to our website, list your properties that you have for rent, and we'll automatically syndicate them to 50 websites. And then you'll get this fire hose of leads from around the internet. And then, then business started to take off. And so like the advice is, test all of your assumptions. We all, like, whenever we're starting a business, we have 50 different assumptions. I believe landlords care about their website. I believe renters are going to landlord websites. I believe, like all these things that I believed were true. And if you go and interview potential customers and really understand where their head is and why they feel the way they feel and what their points of pain are, and you can address that from their perspective, it's like running downhill rather than trying to convince them of something that you believe to be true.
Awesome advice. I think once again that really resonates with us. Like Doug and I just before this phone call, we're talking about like, yeah, we're getting good growth on the podcast. We're feeling really good about our guests. We think that they're like really inspirational and interesting and providing good value. Like what can we do though to get better? And one of the, pieces of feedback that we sporadically get is like, oh man, like 45 minutes, that's a little long. So we're like, yeah, like, why aren't we just listening to our audience? Like, let's try and do some of our pods that are like a shorter version that like really kind of like go right at the core of what the guest is able to provide and the value, and kind of do a little bit more, boom, boom, boom shot. So yeah, so I'm right there with you. Like you have to listen to what your audience, what your potential customers are telling you. And I think it does sound cliche, but when you really break it down, that is one of the pieces I think that made a lot of successful companies successful, is they pivoted to what they should have been doing.
So that was 4 or 5 years in, you said, Jeremy, where you were kind of beating your head against the wall with the original concept, and then you had that light bulb come on, like they keep asking for this, let me deliver this. So that was like 4 or 5 years in.
No, for sure. And again, like when I sit here and tell the 30-second story, I was like, I sold a company for $5 million. It's easy to hear that and be like, oh man, he got lucky. He got this great idea and hit it big. But like the timeline was, I think I first filed paperwork to create Hercules Solutions in 2003. In 2005, I renamed it to RentLink. So it took 2 years just to get to the point where I had a focus on rentals. And then that was selling those rental websites. And then I think it took another at least 2 or 3 years. I think it was probably 2008 or something when we did so it was probably 5 years in before we had our idea, before we were like selling the product that it was eventually what made us successful.
Wow. Now fast forwarding to Personal Finance Club on Instagram. Social media is not one of my skills or Jonathan's skills. And was it something that you were good at coming in, or was it something that you kind of had to build skills at over a long period of time?
Definitely not good at it. And again, I talked to so many people. I talked to someone the other day who was like, I could never do social media because I don't have any original ideas and I'm not interesting. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, on paper, before I started Personal Finance Club, I was like this awkward, I still am this awkward, nerdy computer programmer guy who has no presentation skills. I was never an actor. Terrible graphic design. Nothing really interesting about me. The one interesting thing was that I did sell a company, but like lots of people sold a company, it doesn't make them like Instagram influencers. And I think anyone has something interesting about them. But I just decided to do it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get 50,000 followers in a year. And at that point, I'd kind of considered myself early retired. I had about $3 million in the bank. And so I was able to live off the growth of my investments, all in index funds, by the way. And so I was like going to do it for fun, to become an Instagram influencer. And I had an Instagram account, like a personal account that had, like 200 followers, and I posted like 12 times to it or something, just like my local friends here. And I started posting every single day. And the first month, the posts were trash. No one was looking at them. I remember I was like, all right, I sold a company. I got like all these friends. I think I have like 1,000 Facebook friends. I was like, I'm going to officially announce I'm starting a new thing. People are going to like flock to me and they're like, Jeremy, starting a new thing. Like, how exciting. We're all going to like flock to him and follow him. And so like I made the big announcement like on my other socials. And I think I had like 100 followers at that point, and it went from like 100 to like 150 or something. And so I got like, for like a lifetime of, at like my late 30s, a lifetime of connections and like friendships I built. I got 50 followers from that. And so, and that took me to 150. And so I had, basically nothing. And I was like, okay, well, better try something else. But
so where did the traction start to pick up and come in?
Yeah, that's such an interesting story.
So around this point early on, when I had no followers and no one was seeing my posts or whatever, I was like, all right, Jeremy, you claim to be this business guy and you sometimes give people business advice, like take your own advice. And one of the pieces of advice I give is, instead of tracking your lag metrics, a lag metric is like something you want to have happen. So if you're trying to lose weight, you would track your weight. If you're trying to build a business, you track your revenue. But there are other metrics you can track that are predictive of the lag metrics, and they're directly actionable. And so you can't just lose a pound. That's not a thing that I can do. I can't just be like, I'm going to lose a pound right now. But you could like walk a mile. Like, that's something you can do. And how many miles you walk is predictive of how many pounds you lose. And how many cold calls you make might be predictive of how much your eventual revenue is or whatever. And so you should be tracking like, how many cold calls am I making every day, not what's my revenue, because you can't influence that directly. So I was like, all right, what are my lead metrics for social media? And I came up with 3. I was like, all right, it's how often I post. I just know more content is better. It's how often I post stories, because I wasn't really doing stories. This is an Instagram specific thing. And then it's how many times do I comment on other people's posts. And so if you're on Instagram and you engage with a different account's post, that creates a link from their post to your account. And I wasn't doing that at all. And so I was like, all right, every single day. And, none of this relieves you of being high quality. If you spam people, you're just a spammer. It still makes you trash. So I was trying to make like really 10 really interesting, thoughtful comments a day. And I was like searching for like new rising posts. And I was just like, trying to be funny or trying to be helpful or anything, just give, like not asking for anything. But then I started tracking those numbers. I was like, all right, going to post more stories, going to post more like feed posts, going to make more comments. And then I started tracking those. And then I actually have like a little spreadsheet where I was tracking all the stuff every single day. Like the first month was like dead. And then you can see as those lead metrics went up, the lag metrics started moving. And then like a few of my posts started You know, and there's always like, there's a big aspect of luck in here too. Like it's hard to just be like, hey, I made one comment and it took off. But, you know, I think a lot of entrepreneurship is like putting yourself in the position to get lucky over and over and over, and then eventually getting lucky. And for sure, at the end of the day, you're still lucky, but you put the hard work of putting yourself in a position. So I was commenting over and over, and then someone who had like, I think 5,000 followers saw one of my posts and like, that's a good post. And they shared. I was like, oh my God, someone with 5,000 followers shared my post. And then that one got shared by someone with like 10,000. I think someone with like 50,000 followers shared my post. It was like, my mind was blown. It was like 50,000 followers. Like, are they like a massive celebrity or what? And then, you know, then it started happening more and more as time went on by creating good content and it getting shared.
So the people with larger audiences, they start to post your stuff. And then that's when you really started to have the exponential growth. But before that happened is when you kind of keyed in on focusing on your leading indicators, as opposed to your lagging indicators. And it just took off like a rocket ship from there. That's really helpful and powerful information to share for people that are getting started. Now, Jeremy, you famously retired at 36. How do you define retirement? What is it? What does that mean to you? Is it financial freedom? Is it a certain dollar amount relative to how many years you think you have left? One of our last guests said, I'm going to live till 90. So he was kind of basing his time off of that.
He had a full death clock on his wall and everything.
What's your definition of retirement?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I put retired at 36 in my bio because it's just like an absurd thing to say, because retirement, people think like correlate with old age,
right?
And they think it's like being in a resort and rocking on a rocking chair, and like I'm doing none of those things. And so I actually don't really like that word, despite using it like very prominently. I think the word I prefer is financial independence.
Right.
I feel pretty confident, you know, no one knows the future, but I feel pretty confident I never need income again. I never need to work again. And so I can do whatever I want with my time. And I think that makes me financially independent. And it's, you know, it produces its own challenges. Like now I have to decide like, what's my life about? And I have this existential crisis. If we're not chasing a paycheck, like what are you chasing? And, you know, people like, obviously it's like a massively privileged thing to be able to say that, and people listening might be like, oh, it'd be so easy. I just like, you know, have fun all day. It's like, yeah, maybe, you know, but maybe you get sick of that, or maybe you find that you don't have purpose if you're just like, you know, drinking all day or whatever your version of that is.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, how do you stay motivated to get shit done when it's completely optional now?
Yeah. Well, for a year, to be fair, I did just do the retired thing. So I quit my job in April of 2017. And then for, I guess, more than a year, like a year and a half, because I didn't start personal finance until 2019. So for basically a year and a half, I traveled. I like coached beach volleyball in Italy. I spent like 2 or 3 months there. I was in Australia. I played video games. I installed StarCraft and I got addicted to StarCraft and played StarCraft all day. And like, I'm like kind of finally look back on that year because it was fun, but like also like, what if I was still doing that? Like, what if I was still playing video games? Like what a piece of shit I'd be. It's like, and I think that's what I felt is like,
to each their own, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, like I just would be like my own trust fund baby or whatever, where I'd be like, yeah, I'm living off this. Like I worked hard for 10 years and now I just leech off society now or whatever. I mean, not that I'm leeching off society, but leeching off my past work. So yeah, now I don't know. It's like, it's a different motivation, to be fair. Like early on in my 20s, I was not metaphorically, but literally hungry and I wanted food. And so I needed people to give me money so I could go to the grocery store to buy food. That's like a very, very strong direct motivation. Now I can like order Uber Eats for every meal and just watch Netflix the rest of my life and be fine. But it's like, I just don't want that for my life. So it's a little bit like less of a direct motivation, more of like I want a good life and I like helping people. I like building things. I like employing people, I like having success. And, you know, and to be fair, some days I'm like, I don't feel like working. I don't have to work. So I'm just not going to. I mean, I hope my employees aren't hearing this. They already know.
I think that's okay to give yourself that grace too, though, you know, like when you get to that place, like you don't have to feel like every single day I got to be grinding. I think giving yourself a day off here and there is healthy.
I agree.
And I do think, like you said, the work becomes seeking new sources of motivation, right? So before it was, I got to work to eat.
Challenging yourself and growing.
Yeah. Now it's finding the new motivation sources. Now, what are the most powerful tips that you can give to folks? Because a lot of people watching are they want to find their freedom through entrepreneurship and start a business, but that freedom that they're seeking is kind of where you're at now. How do you recommend people get there in their 30s if that's their goal?
Like financially?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have to spend less than you make and invest the difference. That's how you get there. And I think, people see wealth sometimes like, oh, that guy's driving a fancy car. He must have this huge income. And maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Maybe it's debt. Who knows? But if you want to be financially free, you have to spend less than you make and invest the difference. And the more you can crank those two levers, increasing your income, decreasing your expenses, and the bigger that delta is, then the sooner you can get there. So, when I sold my company for 5 million, my share was 3 million. I paid about $1 million in taxes. So I walked with 2 million. I could have absolutely spent $2 million. In fact, like kind of ironically, whenever, my story gets put somewhere like more public than my own Instagram, like there's all sorts of haters. And one of the most common hater comment is like 2 million in California, enjoy your 6 months of retirement or whatever. And there's like,
oh, the haters.
I know, but like, that's just their mentality. Like I'd spend that so fast. I was like, well, what they didn't read the rest of the article, because that 2 million is now 4.5 million because I'm just not spending it all. I'm spending a little bit. And, they're like, oh, don't even enjoy it. Then like all the haters are rattling out. I was like, no, I live great. I own a like beautiful $1 million home near the beach. I travel whenever I want. I eat whatever I want. I just don't spend all my money. Like, my means now are pretty high. So I still live below my means, which is above the means of most people. And I don't know, just like this mentality. It's like, if you're not spending every penny you make, you're not enjoying your life. I'm like, I disagree with that. I think
they're going to hate on you from either side, right?
Oh yeah.
You're not enjoying it enough, or, oh, you're going to burn out of that money in 6 months.
Right. Whatever, obviously. And, when people see someone successful, I think there's like this gut instinct to be like, I need to invalidate their success to like explain why I don't have that success. Instead of just, my success isn't the best success. Maybe they're better at other parts of life or whatever, but yeah, I think real happiness comes from like freedom with your time. And that's what I have. I can basically say yes or no to anything I want. I love that we don't have to like do sponsored posts or anything like that. I'm just like, have no conflicts of interest. I could say no to everything and have total freedom with my time. And I think that's what really brings happiness, not like driving in an even fancier car or something.
And I'm going to give Personal Finance Club like a shout out right now, because I think that what you're saying is really important for people that are trying to get their life in the right direction. And I think one of the most powerful things you post on Personal Finance Club is you always have these two tables, and it's like, this person makes this much money and this person makes the same amount of money, but this person, puts this much aside and spends, within their means, and this person doesn't. And look what happens to their lives 10, 20 years down the line. And you do a direct comparison. And I think it's super powerful because, it goes back to, I guess, what your mission statement was and why you started is this isn't taught in school. So people, young people, I know I wasn't taught this, but I was fortunate to have good parents like you that kind of gave me some basics. But, it's like, yeah, if you start saving younger and you put it in some of the right places, that can make a significant difference to where you're going to be when you're 30, and a really big difference when you're 40 and 50. And you show those things over and over on your posts, and it's super powerful. So if people are looking for basic, really strong financial literacy information, just check out Personal Finance Club, because it really does break it down with cool imaging to make it simple and just concepts that are powerful, but really basic. And I've really enjoyed watching it. That's one of the reasons I reached out to you on DM, and I super appreciate you being receptive to coming on and share your story, because your story is even cooler than what it looks like through all the other stories. And then one of the other things that I loved about your account is you shared like some of the other 5 businesses that you had started, and some of them didn't make it. And then through this, you told us some of the huge struggles you had early on with the company you did end up selling for millions. And those are like the really cool stories that we started Find Your Freedom to share, because being an entrepreneur is hard, and there's going to be some really tough parts that you go through, and sometimes they're years and sometimes they're months, where you really have to be able to have that inner drive. And this can show how you get out to the other side if you stay with it. And I think it was powerful you shared those. I'm not going to go looking at just what my follower count is. Look, I'm going to look at what my controllables are, how many posts I do per day, how many comments. And that is what really can drive the real growth. So I think that was super cool. One of the questions that we ask every guest that I'm really interested in hearing your personal response to is, how would you define entrepreneurship?
Oh, I don't know. Starting companies, competing in the open market. I think kind of like referencing what you just said, I think a lot of people want a like step-by-step guide. I think people hear about my success. They're like, can you just list like the 10 things I need to do? And then once I check all those things, then I have a successful business.
Yep. Yeah. Can
And
you do that?
and I think some people sell that. I think it's
Right.
bullshit. Like I think that
Right.
you can find like, oh, you be an Amazon drop shipper overnight, just like do these things. And it's so tempting. But the reality is it's like it's a it's a competition, it's a free market out there, more or less. And and everyone is out there kind of competing. And I think that the people who try can succeed, just like people who go run every day can compete in races and win races. And you can see someone who's winning a race having never trained before and be like, that's impossible, I'm not going to try, which is probably true if you don't try, but like the ones who do try. So I think entrepreneurship is just this like concept of like getting out there, figuring things out, being consistent, being persistent, competing, and providing a better product or service than what is out there to make your business. And I also, I'm always hearing the haters in my head, but I feel like some people are like, oh, you're taking money off someone else's plate. Like, I don't think that's true. I think when more people are competing, more people are trying, everyone benefits. I think like the rising tide raises all ships. And so if you think about where was America 100 years ago, or in something like the
Right.
1920s, or 200 years ago in the 1820s, like there was very little wealth. There was wagons, there was people digging for gold, there was no technology. And so when you're competing, you're like you're giving, you're benefiting the market, you're benefiting people. You're not taking market share from someone else. You're like creating more wealth and more value to like benefit everyone.
Absolutely.
And so I think, I don't know. So to answer your question, I don't know what entrepreneurship is, but
That was pretty
there's a lot of
good.
words.
I thought that was great.
That was pretty good.
What traits would you say that you attribute your success to?
I love that, because I think another thing that people think about entrepreneurship is that it's like you got to be really good at what you do. It's like, and I'm like, I've probably been misquoting this study for years, but I think it still teaches a good story. They looked at the different characteristics of successful entrepreneurs to figure out like what's the demographic of people who entrepreneurs do the best. Is it men versus women, education, all this stuff? And they found like the one thing that had no correlation to success in entrepreneurship is how good you are at what you do, like your area of expertise. And so, a fantastic cook is no better or no more likely or no less likely to create a good restaurant than a non-cook. And so I think people think like, oh, I have to be excellent. But what really makes a good entrepreneur is just like a breadth of hard work. So creating a restaurant is like a little bit about creating good food, but it's also about marketing and ambiance and hiring and service and lighting and branding, and there's a million different things. And entrepreneurs can figure all that stuff out. And whether or not they know how to cook, they'll just figure it out, just like they figure out everything else. And then also persistence. And they found that the thing that had no correlation to good entrepreneurs is how good you are at what you do. But what had the highest correlation to entrepreneurs is actually immigrants to the US. And I think that is because immigrants, living overseas and then deciding to move to the US is not an easy path. There's not a checklist 1 through 10, do these things, you get to move in. It requires just like this like lofty vision and a ton of persistence and figuring it out. How do I do it? Like get to the embassy, figure out, like try this, try that, keep going over and over and over and over. And the people who figure out how to get into the US also like, okay, I'm going to start a company. How do I do it? Figure this out, figure that out. And so I think it's just really that persistence, that ability to figure things out, constant lifetime learners. And I think, if I was better at those things, I think I'd be a better entrepreneur, and I'm a little bit good at them, which is how I got to where I am.
Beautiful. We feel like mentors and coaches are so critical on this journey and to reaching success. You mentioned your father matching your $1,200 when you were 17, and that was kind of the first spark of learning about Roth IRAs and getting on this personal financial freedom journey. were there any other mentors or coaches that played a significant role that you think back on and go, man, if it hadn't been for this person, who knows where I'd be? Anybody come to mind?
Yeah, I'm not big on seeking out mentors, and I think that's probably a failure of mine. I think that mentors are like really powerful, but the one I do have to give a shout out to is my mom. My mom is now a 70-year-old woman who has a degree in computer science, and so there's not many of those walking around. And when I
Wow.
started my company, I was the sole founder, and she had worked her way up the software industry for years, and she was kind of helping me with business stuff. And then um, she was on a sabbatical, and I suggested that I like bring her on to the team, and so I actually sold her 30% of the company when I was like 23 or something. I think I sold it to her for $1,500, and then when we sold the company, she made $2 million from that, and so that was like she was basically able to retire off that. So, but yeah, for sure, my mom was a great role model. She was my co-owner of RentLinks for many years, and massively privileged to have that in my life.
That's huge. Yeah, I think that yeah, I think mentors are a really important piece. And I love, once again, your transparency, saying like, look, maybe this is a blind spot I have, but you're still grinding away on, growing and developing as a person. And I think that's really important. Once again, it kind of like mirrors my life. I kind of retired in my mid 30s, also retired. But here we are. We wanted to challenge ourselves. We wanted to get, keep growing and keep learning new skills and trying to help people. And I think that those things really do provide a more full life than just simply drinking beers and sitting around, sometimes playing video games. And that is an important piece of life for some people, and and others, it's not really what fulfills us. But I do want to say, Jeremy, I think this episode was super unique and was off the charts in the amount of value you were able to provide aspiring entrepreneurs in really digestible tidbits that they can really apply to, like, oh, that's a really good point. I should probably start doing that on whatever project I'm working on. Or like, here's how I can start finding some projects, like Jeremy talked about this. So sharing your story is super awesome. And I think that the transparency that you have on your life is a really unique thing that I think people can really resonate with. So thanks so much for coming with us today.
Thanks, guys. I love what you're doing. Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Other than Personal Finance Club, like where else can we send people to check you out?
Yeah, I mean that's what you Google, personalfinanceclub.com. Like you said, most of it happens on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Yeah, that's kind of where you find me.
Awesome. Jeremy, thank you. You are the man. We appreciate you. And have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Real quick, 3 things. Are you an aspiring entrepreneur that wants to find your own freedom? Or are you just unfulfilled or unhappy in your current job and you crave more? Our goal at FYF is to build a community uniting successful entrepreneurs with aspiring entrepreneurs and provide the best resources possible to support you on your entrepreneurial journey. Number 2, check out our free entrepreneurship ebook and all the resources you need to find your own freedom at findyourfreedompod.com. Number 3, one of the best ways for podcasts to grow is to share episodes with your friends and family. It would mean the world to us if you would follow us on your favorite audio platform, watch us on YouTube, and share your favorite episodes with friends and family.